What for traits do you see in the DNA of a CEO?
You have to be willing to take risk. If you are not willing to take risk, being a CEO is probably not for you.
Welcome to the CEO DNA, the podcast where we uncover the mindset, strategies, and innovations that drive the world's top entrepreneurs. Today, we're diving into a topic that every high performer should be paying attention to: the future of medicine, longevity, and regenerative health. Dr. Janine McKay, a leading expert in sport, functional, and biohacking medicine, helps CEOs and athletes to optimize their health. And Dr. Adeel Khan, a regenerative medicine specialist and gene therapy innovator, pushing the boundaries of longevity, cell therapy, and cutting-edge medical science. Welcome, Dr. Janine and Dr. Adeel Khan.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Janine, what is a good DNA of a CEO or a manager of a clinic, as you're also co-founder of a clinic here in Dubai?
Oh, well, what is the DNA of a CEO? It's feeling very epigenetic. I feel, well, one, you have to be able to think outside the box. So we know there's science, but where we struggle is the art of the science. So you have to be more like a chameleon, keep up with trends, and just be open-minded to shifts.
Nice. Dr. Adeel, you had the chance to work with so many high-profile entrepreneurs around the world, especially also here in Dubai. What for traits do you see in the DNA of a CEO?
You have to be willing to take risk. If you are not willing to take risk, being a CEO is probably not for you.
Yeah. So today we want to talk really also about a bit of the of these things we as managers, founders, entrepreneurs, CEOs can do in our daily life to have peak performance and optimal health and of course longevity. Dr. Janine, what topics would you say are here important?
Well, the most important foundational ones are one that actually don't cost money, but they definitely cost a lot of motivation. So, some of the small changes are really big. Lots of people would rather pop a pill for an ill or you'd take an injection. But unfortunately, you do need the foundation for things to work. So, prioritizing sleep like a habit should be one. And I know it is definitely hard with little ones and kids and pets and, whatever else noise there is going on in the head and the house. But there are ways to try to prioritize that. Nutrition. So food is medicine. And the other thing to realize with that too is that there are lots of shifts in agricultural processing and how foods are made and nutrient deficient soils. So we need to keep up with, how to take appropriate vitamins as well as using food as medicine. And then of course, hydration is another one. So, we have a lot of people in this region that travel all around the world, and it's really tough to find clean water or not contaminated water. And exercise, that's a big one. There's a very fine balance between too much and too little. So it's about finding the right balance for your body in the current state. And, just supporting your body's natural energy and detox processes. And then, of course, as we age, there are lots of things that tend to diminish after the age of 30. And it's just about putting these things back in and having the raw material we need to function.
Super interesting. I think it's so interesting that it at the end always comes back also to the basics. So what are you doing, Adeel, on a daily basis or weekly basis?
No, everything she said is exactly right on. You got to do the foundational stuff. But for me, I mastered the foundational stuff, I guess, a while ago. So then I was obviously like, what else is out there? Right. And so I'm doing things like peptides on a daily basis, which many people, if they don't have the foundational stuff mastered, then I wouldn't recommend that. You first got to do the foundational stuff. Then maybe some personalized supplements based off what, blood work and what you need. And then peptides can be a great tool because, look, most people have probably heard of NMN, right? NMN is a peptide too. And now there's other peptides that can help your body to function better. For example, one of the favorite ones we were talking about before the show started is called SS31. It can help to repair your mitochondria. That's a peptide I'm on right now. And it can help with energy. And it has a longevity effect. And these things are not overly expensive either. So I think there's still relatively low-hanging fruit for a lot of people. And now there's so many different peptides out there. And of course, there's entire podcasts about peptides, so we don't have to go into all of it. But the point is they're becoming much more accessible and affordable, and they're going to be more widely available and actually now they are much more easily available than they were even a few years ago.
Yeah, and I think more and more people are also willing to invest time and money also in it to actually get into the peak performance or in a good state, because they know, the best business will not work when the body of the management is not working as well. So it's very essential. Then we also heard about medicine 1.0 to 4.0. What is it about, and where are we at the moment, Dr. Janine?
Well, we came from medicine 1.0, which was, I guess, pre-20th century. And then the medicine 2.0, which is your standard conventional pill for an ill. And then I'm very happy to say I'm alive for the 3.0 and the 4.0. But it's interesting to watch kind of the history of medicine. And, I come from an alternative medicine background. And pre-Big Pharma, we actually used to all work together and be on the same page. And then once Big Pharma came in, there was a big segregation and hierarchy of, alternative and conventional medicine. And then now with the 3.0, it actually reverse engineered it, which is the name of our clinic, Reverse Engineered New You. But they basically reverse engineered this to come back to where we used to be, but with a lot more very neat innovations. And so now alternative medicine practitioners and conventional are working together a lot. Still for the most part, there's some that are not. But with the shift into the 4.0, we're going to all have to work together. And the 4.0 is where the gene therapy is coming in. This is where Dr. Khan has some really, really innovative things to talk about. And then the 3.0 is your personalized medicine, precision medicine, functional medicine.
Dr. Khan, you really also push boundaries, true pioneer. When did you realize that the traditional system is broken?
When my mom got sick, which was a long time ago now, I guess, when I was in medical school. So like 12 years ago or so. And she had a chronic medical condition, and the medical system becomes painfully obvious that it's not solving solutions. It's just giving, like you said, pill for an ill, and sort of just not getting to the root cause of it. So that was obviously very personal. So because of that, though I went into this whole world of integrative medicine, functional medicine, I read a lot of alternative textbooks to get a more holistic perspective of how the body works. And I'm glad I had that foundation, because now obviously I have a different perspective when I interpret data, and I can look at things from a bird's eye view from all these different angles, as opposed to just being inundated from conventional medicine and taking that at face value isn't always the right way to do it, because you have to look at everything else too. So,
have you ever been afraid about risking your career by pushing the boundaries?
Of course, especially in Canada. Yeah, and Canada is one of the most, it is probably the strictest regulatory environment in the world when it comes to healthcare. And it's good for medical education. It's definitely one of the best in the world for that. But the problem is the innovation gets all stifled because of the regulatory hurdles. And so you have doctors who've lost their licenses for lots of silly things because they promoted alternative medicine and things like that. So that was part of the reason why I left, was because I didn't feel comfortable practicing medicine in an environment where the government and the regulatory body isn't going to support me. And so I am putting a lot of risk out there, and that's the reality of the situation I'm in. But now in Dubai, obviously, it's much more favorable, and there's a lot more just innovation happening here because people want it to happen, and the government and the people who support this have a completely different mindset than the people back home. But at the end of the day, I had to take a lot of risk, and now the risk is definitely less. Now that I've built, a few, my brand and a few companies and stuff, I'm not taking as much risk. But to get here, I had to take a lot of risk that most doctors would probably never do. So.
Yeah. Well, but I really feel, and as we know each other already for quite a while now,
my whole passion for this wasn't monetary or status or anything. It was always just wanting to help people. And that was the reason I took the risk, because I felt taking the risk was worth it to make a difference in these people's lives, and hopefully in a lot of people's lives now, with the technologies that we're scaling and building.
Yeah. Dr. Janine, I realize that it starts with the basics. We talked about sleep, nutrition, and of course also drinking the right water, as I understood now, and of course enough. But before the patients actually start with all treatments with Dr. Khan, he often actually sends them to you. Why is that the case, and what are the basics people need to get right as a second step?
Well, when you're looking at treatments that, for one, are more financially demanding, and you're, maybe a little bit unsure, you don't know if it's the right direction. It's like growing a plant. I actually heard one of your analogies about kids in the microenvironment. I like that one. I might take it. But I've always said, it's like growing like a palm tree in the Arctic. The environment isn't conducive for it to thrive. And so when I do see people, so in Dubai, I worked actually alongside with Dr. William Morel. He's one of my mentors. This was back in 2015, I think. So he was here for many years, and he did the stem cell here. And we started doing, working together with the functional medicine and the stem cell, trying to prep patients to make the environment more conducive. So, Dr. Khan will talk about this a little bit more with how cellular therapy works. But when you want to, your body has to be in homeostasis to thrive. And so that comes down to gut health. It comes down to your control center, which is your hormones. Your circulation, inflammation. So all of these things are at play. And, if the environment isn't conducive, the therapy may not be optimized. And so we're looking at a few different types of interventions. But if the body's thriving, your mitochondria is thriving, your, inflammation is balanced. I don't want to say low or none, because you absolutely need some inflammation. That where my part comes in is, give maybe a case where we had one gentleman come in who had very, very, very high inflammation. So he was bedridden, put on prednisone for about 3 months. And so he wanted to look at, gene therapy for balancing his immune system. And so when I saw him...
He basically wanted me to inject a bunch of stem cells into him intravenously.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think you need that at the moment. Let's first send you to Dr. Janine.
Yeah, and lots, I've worked in Dubai almost 10 years now, and I'll say commercially, lots of doctors just do the intervention without looking at the environment.
It's an easy money grab.
It's an easy
especially when
money.
the patient's willing to pay.
Yeah, even just something like PRP. I've seen doctors do PRP for a trigger point. And so it has to be the right trajectory and the right environment. So where I come in is, I'll figure out underlying root causes. So again, there could be a few layers to work through. And the other thing is, when someone has inflammation, we have to look at, especially when it was that high for that long, is genetics. So that is very much can tell a little bit of the story, especially when you see changes in the biomarkers. And then also looking at cytokine profiles. So I've often just sent Dr. Khan messages like, hey, we have these cytokines. How can we work with them? Because we have pro-inflammatory, anti-inflammatory cytokines, TH1, TH2 balances. And, once we've taken a body to a certain position, you've already had autoimmune activation for some, okay, with autoimmune disease. Once you have that activation, it's really hard to get everything at bay in terms of balance. And so this is then where I will refer back to him saying, hey, we got all of the blood markers good, gut health is good, hormones are good, now what? And then that's where I bring Dr. Khan back in.
Yeah, once the soil is set it's fertile and ready, then you can put in the good stuff, which are the cells, which are think of them as, I like to say, like little children, because they're very much responsive to their environment. When you're a child, you just react to your environment, and that's how cells are too. So if you put cells in an environment that's harsh, that is, for example, harsh meaning like there's not a lot of oxygen, there's too much inflammation, there's too many free radicals, there's too many factors in there for them to thrive, then they're not going to survive, and they're not going to be able to do their job effectively. And what's the job of a stem cell? The job is to repair tissue, right? And then to regrow new tissue. So very simply, that's what they're doing. They're just the ultimate repair guys in your body. And now, as Dr. Janine knows, we're isolating this special population of MUSE, the mu stem cells, the Japanese ones that are going to become more popular because they survive better and they're pluripotent. So we can put that, once she's done that groundwork, then we can put that into people's bodies to really reprogram or rebalance their immune system and have a long-term resolution of their chronic condition. So this is a big difference between that and pharmaceuticals, right? You're not just taking a drug for the rest of your life. You're actually getting a patient into balance, and you're getting them into, like, let's say, remission from their chronic illness.
So interesting. I really now also finally understood that there needs to be some groundwork done. Why is this so important for CEOs and entrepreneurs? How can you transfer the message that this is so important that they have to pay attention on that to be also on a high performance level?
I think it also depends on where the the patient or the client's coming from with their goals. Okay, that's a big one that, health isn't defined. Health is your own operational definition, right? And so once the particular person can identify where they want to go and where they want to be, then they can see what's important and how they're going to do it. Because I see lots of people where the definition of health to them is aesthetics, but then I often push the question, well, where do you want to be when your kids have kids, and things like that, when you're a grandmother, or, we have often our grandparents coming to visit Dubai. You take them to Dubai Mall, they can't walk around, they need a rest, and they're only 70 years old. So once they redefine what their health and longevity goals are, then then they can kind of build up that foundation and put the layers together themselves. So I often try not to tell people what to do. I let them figure out what to do on their own just by prompting the right questions.
Yeah, very, very good point.
Yeah, I find that a lot of, I think more and more of the people I'm treating nowadays are high performance, let's call them executives or athletes, and they're the best at what they do, and they want to remain the best at what they do. And a lot of that can be intellectual too, because as it is with CEOs and people who are running their own businesses, and the foundational stuff is one thing, but then it's like, how do you, there's layers to that, right? And it's all about optimization, as opposed to just waiting for a problem to happen and being like, okay, well, maybe your blood work isn't completely out of the range, but maybe you're suboptimal, and how do you optimize that in a way that makes sense? And that's kind of the stuff you do, so that they can actually have that, let's say, extra percentage of whether that's mental sharpness or acuity or restfulness or whatever it may be. So it's giving them that extra edge by using these foundational tools, and then if you really want to, let's say, extend your years of productivity, that's where I come in with our stuff. And that's more, let's say, the cherry on top. So if you're like, hey, I'm 50 years old and I want to keep as sharp as possible till I'm in my 70s and 80s, then this is where those cell and gene therapy things can be very helpful to extend that and help with intelligence preservation, and also with slowing down cognitive decline and slowing down and even reversing the biological aging process.
How young can I still be?
I've seen aging reductions. Now we're starting to get some more data with the longevity interventions we have. So we use this company called Generation Lab that measures, it's methylation based, but it has a better model than some of the other ones. So anyways, the point is it can basically tell you how fast you're aging, and it tells you 19 different organ systems. So it can tell you your brain, your heart, your kidney, liver, and on the, let's say, the absolute score, you can see biological age reduction of people from like 10 to 15 years, which is pretty significant. We're talking about people in their 50s or 60s, obviously. We're not talking about like a 30-year-old. Mm-hmm. But the point is, and people often say it too. They say, like, I feel younger, I have more energy, I'm more vibrant. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really what means. And then to me, obviously this stuff is new, but looking 20 years down the road, I think you'll see a lot of these people when they're in their 70s or 80s, you'll see them still being very high performing. And that's, I think, the exciting part for someone who's a CEO.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys have also so many superstars coming from the sport, from the film industry, from also entrepreneurs, and I think that's quite impressive. Maybe we can even show some of the pictures, people who visit your clinic, and you're allowed to post them on Instagram. I think it's really really interesting. So you have a big kind of like almost a hype at the moment to do such things, right?
Yeah, I'm always looking for innovative treatments. And one of the things that's very innovative, I think, that builds upon what you do, which is how do you get the environment ready? So not only do you want to add certain things, you also want to remove. And that's mm-hmm. really becoming a big, let's say, principle of medicine, is that we're starting to understand that one of the reasons why we age and one of the reasons why our bodies break down is because of these accumulation of toxins, microplastics, chronic infections that just build up in our bodies. And in fact, chronic infections are being linked to almost every chronic disease. So mm-hmm. Alzheimer's,
especially
MS,
autoimmune.
Yeah. And so meaning there's different like bugs that just live inside our bodies, and over time they become more virulent, or they become more persistent, and then our bodies can't deal with them as we get older, or even when we're younger for some people. So the point is, these things are in our body. It's part of our environment now. So what do you do about it? How do you deal with all these chronic toxins? So therapeutic plasma exchange, plasmapheresis, has become very popular, And that's where people, you may have seen people holding that giant bag of like plasma that they're removing, but that's actually not that effective. Number one, the filter actually removes something called albumin from your body, which is a large protein, and it removes certain immunoglobulins from your body too, which you don't necessarily want to remove. And then you have to replace those. And then the other thing is the filter itself isn't as strong as some of the newer technology. So there's a technology step up above from that called in-use which is from Switzerland. But then there's even one better than that, which is called Clarify. And that's the one that seems like I think it's the best in the world from what I can tell. It's in the UK only at the moment, but it uses this very special filter, and you just sit there for 2 hours, and it's going to remove microplastics, and it's going to remove all these pesticides and toxins and forever chemicals that build up in your body.
So I have to translate this a little bit. So I get a big needle in here, then the blood goes out, then it will be filtered, and then it goes back.
Yes.
The filtered clean blood. Will it be just filtered, or will also be something else added?
No, they don't add anything. It's just filtration process. But the beauty of this is because unlike the plasmapheresis, you don't have to add in anything. Right. And then the filter is actually much more effective. And they have data on this showing how it's the only thing I found in the world that removes microplastics. And microplastics are a huge problem because everyone is exposed to them now. We consume something like, I heard it was something like 1 credit card worth of plastic every year. Based off plastic consumption of drinking from bottles. And
even just your clothes. Microplastics are in your clothes. That's why we want to try to source this 100% organic cotton,
yeah.
Right?
Yes.
But yeah.
So then these things are building up in our bodies. And so this is the only technology that can remove it. So then if you remove all these toxins, people feel clearer, they can sleep better, they can really have a longevity benefit. And that stuff is also very easy. And that's something you just do on your own, but we do it often for patients, for us, because they're coming to us interested in stem cells. We'll say, hey, do this first, get your blood or your plasma cleaned, and then put in the stem cells, then to put in the good stuff in your body.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see the biggest peak performance curve from people coming to your clinic? That means, what are the things you do most where you see the highest return of investment, as we talk in business?
It's a tough one because it depends on their baseline.
It really depends on the baseline.
And one thing to also understand too is there's ebbs and flows. It's not a linear process. So when someone's up, they may come back down, and it's about supporting them at the right time. But where I see the biggest shifts are, I'll give you kind of 2 examples. One is your, sedentary, very low health IQ, standard American diet, where you get them to change their diet and run their first 5K, in a period of time. And it's amazing to see. The other really neat shift that I see is with athletes, right? Because athletes, believe it or not, they're very broken. They perform at a very high level all the time on contracts with a ton of pressure, and they only have a couple team doctors for an entire team. So that's why a lot of athletes step out. And when they step out and actually take a look at their, individual biomarkers, even genetics, when it comes down to, filtering your blood, we are all going to accumulate different amounts of toxins at different rates. And so when we have, one athlete who maybe doesn't detox well, everyone has the organs, yes, but we all have genetic polymorphisms in which it could interfere with the process. And so when you have an athlete that is not recovering, resting heart rate's high in the morning, blood work is all out of whack, you change that 1 month, it's amazing what they feel like in terms of the mental clarity mostly, because when they're mentally clear, their performance is much better. So you kind of have 2 different, and then, a third one I'm just going to add in is when we talked about the co-infections, a game changer is when we see these people with problems, they have an infection, but nobody can figure it out. So there's something there, white blood cells are off, high lymphocytes, chronic brain fog, high immunoglobulins, but nobody knows what's going on. A recent case I just had was, it was from a tick bite. He has Lyme disease, but his tick bite was like 25 years ago. And we're also really the big push too is after COVID, because a lot of people are now experiencing this long COVID, but it shouldn't be called long COVID. It should be long virus, because we're seeing it after dengue and, CMV, EBV, Coxsackie. So when you catch these people and find out what the root is, and you just do an intervention, it's a game changer for them.
Right. Dr. Adeel, where do you see the biggest shift? People coming to your clinic?
So I deal with a lot of patients with chronic pain and chronic illnesses. We've had a lot of people that are able to avoid surgery, and basically we're able to get them back to full function without having to go under the knife, essentially. And that's obviously a very dramatic and impactful thing that you can do. And then I think for people who are on the other end, they're healthy and they're just looking to optimize. For them, where we see a lot of benefit is really the energy recovery and even strength and muscle, because we have that follostatin gene therapy, which can help your body put on more muscle as well. So that's kind of the different interventions that we have that can be impactful for people, whether it's on the chronic illness side or just like performance and health optimization side.
Right. So when somebody comes to any of your clinics, so this person should get a full checkup at the beginning, see where's your baseline, and then where do you want to go to, and then you will have to set more or less an individual plan for each person. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. That takes time. With individuality, you can't make protocols. Especially with what I do. So it takes time because everyone has a very different baseline.
I think that's so important to understand that there's
Yeah.
not a protocol, you can do for everyone. When people call you or other doctors say, hey, tell me what's your protocol? No, there is no.
There is no. And a lot of people don't actually understand the work behind it. I'll get somebody call saying like, oh, I don't need an appointment. Just, interpret my Dutch Plus. And it's like, it's a hormone test. And it's like, oh, there's a little bit more that you have to go through, right? Because it's just so different for everybody. But yeah, anything?
Gene therapy 101. Let's talk a little bit about it. What is the basic? Let's talk without the hype about it.
Well, I think people get scared when they hear gene therapy, and rightfully so, because you're introducing some sort of foreign bacteria or virus, usually into your body. That's what traditional gene therapy means, is you're introducing some sort of foreign DNA. So of course, the thought of it makes people scared. And that's why it took a long time before it became, before it started to take off. But having said that, people have heard of probably CRISPR now, which is the gene editing technology that can act like scissors to cut out different parts of your DNA and put them together, so to speak, and remove the parts that you don't want. So the gene editing technology is really getting sophisticated. But obviously, when you have something as strong as CRISPR, there's risk of offsite targets and whatnot. So we don't do CRISPR, but what we do is we do something called plasmid, which is basically derived from E. coli, which is a bacteria, but we're not taking the bacteria. We're just taking the backbone, which is, it's called a mini circle. So it's like literally a mini circle under a microscope. And then basically you can insert a gene onto that mini circle vector, and then you can inject it into patients. And what it does is it tells your own body to make more of this peptide. Now, the plasmids have been around for a long time, and this plasmid technology specifically has been studied under this group for about 7 years. But there's other groups doing it now as well. And plasmids are very inert, meaning they just sit there and they don't migrate, and they don't stimulate your immune system, and they just sit there and they say, hey, make more of this. And so it's a very, let's say, simplistic way to do gene therapy. Obviously, there's a lot more sophisticated ways out there, but this is a safe way at least, and the results can be quite good for a lot of people. So I've had some patients like Ben Greenfield is one of them, who's a biohacking guy, and he put on like 10 pounds of muscle with the follistatin, which is kind of crazy. That's unusual, I would say, but the point is it can work very well in some people. But then there are other patients I've had who didn't notice much. So I wouldn't say it's perfect. And that's the reality of it. It's still new and it's still experimental. But I think as the time goes on, there's going to be more research and more development. And there's something, I think the most exciting gene therapy technology is something called prime gene editing, which is basically a better version of CRISPR. So if you think of your instructions for your DNA as like a library, and you have these books, right? You think of CRISPR as like taking out a page or taking out a few pages in the book. But imagine prime editing is actually using a pencil and rewriting the words. So it's much more specific. Right. So that's being developed right now, where it's like they can target the exact nucleotide that they want to edit. So imagine you could just be like, hey, we have this problem and we want to take this exact problem and we want to change it. So that's called prime gene editing, and that's being worked on right now. So it'd be pretty cool.
I'm coming from the software development, and I think it's so cool. You can like plug and play later on and see what you want to fix.
Exactly.
But also there's something I heard. It's not about the treatment so much. It's more about also the place or the terrain, or the area where it is. What does that mean actually?
That's the environment. So yeah, it's just still down to the environment. Because again, if the gene therapy is done, but it's not in the right environment, you may not get the best results.
Yeah, and what can we do as as managers to be in the right environment?
Well, you got to stay healthy. What does that mean, though?
So it's
Again, it goes back to that definition of health. What is that? It doesn't mean to over-exercise and to go on a keto diet.
Over-exercise, good. And I also know your husband. He's also quite sporty. But you also tell him sometimes, look, now it's enough. You also need your rest days and rest time, right?
Yeah. In the context of mental health too, you have to put it all together. We didn't talk much about mental health, but it's very much part of this holistic picture. You can't take a CEO or a high functioning person or an athlete and just tell them we need to calm down because you're burning out your adrenals, because their outlet is their exercise or else they wouldn't get by. So again, it comes down to my original thing where I talked about the art of the science. And that's like you need to understand holistically how the body works. And if you take something out, what are you going to put in? But if you take it out, that might be their medicine and their endorphin release. Right. So it's very much very individual.
Good. Yeah. How do you see that?
How do I see?
Yeah, so basically that it's really about the place where this person is at when it comes to also, of course, chronic inflammation, biomedical, and other topics. So to really see it holistic about this person before you treat them, so you really check them. And of course, you also send them sometimes to Dr. Janine.
Yeah, I mean, look, people are looking to me for shortcuts most of the time, but I had a few of those today where they want the most cutting edge treatments, and they want the one that's, let's say, the most exciting, because obviously stem cells have a lot of excitement around them. But the reality is that the results are really much going to be dictated based off how you prepare your body for it, as we talked about earlier. And so that's why you have to look at the body. It's called systems biology. Your body is a system. It's not what we were taught in medical school, where it's like you have your brain, you have your heart, you have your kidney, and you learn them as different systems. That's not how the body works. It works like that if you have like an acute illness, if you have like you get some stabbed in the heart. You have a problem with your heart that you need to see a heart surgeon for. But for chronic illnesses, that's not how the body works. It works in the system, and the system is all integrated and working with one another. So how does that system break down, and why does it break down? That's what we need to look at. And that's why the foundational stuff is really, like we were saying, it's like the hormones, the gut health, the immune system balance. Like those are like the big things that we really need to look at and figure out how do we figure out and balance those things first. And then we create that fertile soil to plant the seeds, AKA the cells.
Interesting. Most people think of medicine in terms of pills and procedures and so on. What is the mindset shift you believe people need to do to understand that what needs to happen to take also the options that we have out there today, right? So not only pills and medicine when I'm sick, to just put something on top to kind of feel better for a day, but not working on the true issue.
Yeah, I think that comes down to that inflection point of like medicine 2.0 to 3.0, where, some people still do prefer a pill for an ill, which is, I guess it's okay. But it's really just coming down to an understanding that there are root causes, and so once that's identified, then change can happen, because you can't do what you don't know.
Right, for sure. Right.
Well, I think you have to set up the environment for success, because have you heard of the blue zones, like where people live longer? But most of it's basically this idea where there's these different places around the world where they found people live longer than the average population. For example, some places people are living until the 90s. There's a lot of centenarians, people living over their hundreds. Like there's a place called Okinawa in Japan, and then there's another one in Italy. But the point is, a lot of those places actually it may not be completely true. It might just be bad record keeping, as a recent people have been is talking about. But one place that's definitely has documented that's true is Singapore. And the reason is Singapore is successful in longevity is because they set up their environment for success. Their environment, the greenery that they have, the incentives they put into health promoting behaviors, the fact that they make it difficult to smoke, there's just so many things that they do that, yes, maybe some people think it's controlling, but at the end of the day, it does work. So people need an environment. If you have an environment that has junk food everywhere, it's easily affordable, accessible, you have an obesogenic environment, endocrine disruptors, you have all these things that are making people's difficult to live healthy lives. And of course, most people are going to be overweight and out of shape and have a hard time living a good, healthy life. So if it's up to, I think the regulatory bodies and the government to work together and create policies that allow healthy behavior to be easier. And until that happens, I just don't see that shift happening in our lifetime. I think if you look at it, it's, yes, maybe people are less obese now because of GLP-1s, but I don't think people are healthier, and people aren't necessarily having enough muscle mass or exercising nearly as much as they should as a mass population we're talking about.
But people do grow older, of course, now over time. So is this not a sign of also being healthier, longevity?
They're living longer, but not healthier. So
health span versus lifespan.
And of course, the discussion is also, do we want to live as long as possible, but maybe have to not be healthy and have pain and be
and that's what's happening. Well, that's what's destroying our medical system across the world, because the chronic disease burden is increasing, and we're not doing anything to prevent or reverse that.
How would a perfect healthcare system look like?
Oh, perfect. Maybe. Well, I've had a lot of people come in from Brazil and Belgium, and not Belgium, Germany. Yeah, and they, they're like, oh, I'm going to see you first because I don't want these antibiotics and stuff. And I'm like, okay. And they come in with things like a UTI or, some sort of infection that's commonly treated, H. pylori. Right. And I'm very surprised when that's not the first thing they want, because usually I'm fighting, providing education to, please, let's just do this naturally. You actually, for this particular case, doesn't require an antibiotic.
Yeah, I'm one of them. I always say, no, but antibiotics, please, no antibiotics.
And again, there's a time and a place for it, though, and that's where you have to find the art of that, right?
Yeah. No, I think, so what's else possible today? Cutting edge advancement and technologies we can do. I think we mentioned most of it. Did we forget something else?
Well, there's a lot, but I think one of the most exciting parts is cellular reprogramming, which is like we were talking about. As a software engineer, you can appreciate this. Imagine you can program your cells to do what you want them to do. So, for example, you can make old cells young again, and those are called the Yamanaka factors. And
so my gray hair turned out to be
those are things that are being worked on by a few different companies right now. And so that's cellular reprogramming, I think, is going to be really the future of, let's say, a lot of chronic diseases and aging as well. And so that's where I see the most potential right now. And you combining that cellular reprogramming technology with different gene therapies is probably what's going to lead us to what we call longevity escape velocity, where it's just like you can live a very long time and healthy for that period of time too.
Nice. Do you think the person who will be at 1,000 years old is already born, Dr. Janine?
Well, I don't know. We have to ask the question if we want to live that long. But it's again.
You want to live so long?
It's not about that. For sure, I want to live a long time, but I want a long health span. And so that's something that we often forget is that, I want to live till I'm 120. Well, do you want to be in a wheelchair with a catheter at 100? And that's where health span comes in. So with the technologies we have now, we can actually make lifespan equal your health span, where you can be healthy at the end of your age.
The future of medicine. Let's talk a bit about AI, longevity, and what's coming next. So, what do you see in the next years to come? I think it's fascinating to see just how many more medical studies came out since AI is really getting more mainstream. I think you told me last time some study that I think in the last year or 2 years.
Yeah, like 2 million medical studies in and basically medical journals or medical papers are published every year. So it's pretty much impossible for any human being to understand how fast medicine's moving. So that leaves it up to AI. And I think there's already breakthroughs happening because of AI. But interestingly, what I think one of the most exciting projects right now for AI is a digital cell. So that's actually happening in UAE. There's a place in I forgot which university, but where he's like a computer scientist and he's a microbiologist as well, just some super genius guy who's working on making a digital cell. So meaning you could mimic different drugs and you can mimic different things and test it out on the cell to see what would happen. I don't know if it'll be possible, but let's say if that does happen, that'd be a pretty incredible breakthrough. But it might be one of those things too. In the computer science world, I think they call it computational irreducibility, which means that if something's too complex, then it's impossible for you to actually model it out in a computer simulation, which I think the human body might be, just because of the proteomics and all these it's just so complicated. So that's why for now, those are exciting things for the future, but that's still science fiction. But I think for now that, interventions that can actually have an effect on your cellular signatures, those do exist today, which are pretty cool.
Yeah. How do you see the future of healthcare? What can we expect in the future?
Oh, well, with AI coming full blown, precision medicine, I know that that term is thrown out a lot, but we're not quite there yet. Genetics, gets researched every year. We find something is low impact and then it's high impact. So I just think over the years, we're going to really dial it down to precision medicine. And then, of course, combine that with cellular therapy. And, well, we can live till we're 1,000.
I think it's so interesting. Also, then, I had to I wrote my PhD in business science, you in medical. I think also when I would have to do it again, of course, now I'm thinking it would be so easy, right? So we still had to go to a library to read all the books and read what other people wrote about the specific topic. But now knowing that there's an AI that can combine everything, what has been written, and takes the key points out of everything, I think it will be such a speedy exponential growth of knowledge. I think that will be really interesting.
And I do have people that chat GPT it all the time when they come see me. And what I've realized is that it, again, doesn't do the art of it. I have people getting diarrhea and they're like, oh, I tried this. I'm sorry, I didn't listen to you, because AI is spitting out a protocol based off of symptoms still.
Yeah,
exactly. AI is still very far away from solving complex biology problems.
And it's still very individual. I think it's still based on certain basis. AI maybe hasn't all the inputs, and of course it's based on certain protocols and decision making. Yeah. If an entrepreneur listening wants to take away one action today for future-proof their health, what would it be? One from you and one from you.
Well, now it's gonna be funny. From the stem cell guy, you would think it would be stem cells, but it would be clean your blood, because I think relative for your bang for your buck is probably the most cost effective solution for longevity that I can think of at the moment, with one intervention.
Is this also the biggest mistake high performance do nowadays?
People just don't. I think most people are doing plasmapheresis, which is becoming popular because of heavy marketing. But like I said, it's not nearly as effective as this Clarify procedure, which is much more effective at cleaning your plasma and removing microplastics, which and in turn will help your longevity. But it will also help so many other things, especially if you're struggling with like brain fog or sleep issues. Like, it's just a low hanging fruit that can help a lot of people. That's just the easy thing to do. It's not, it's just a very generic blanket statement without knowing the individual, being like, get your plasma clean, because everyone can use it.
What do you see as the biggest mistake and the biggest takeaway high performance can do today?
The biggest mistake?
Yeah, what is the biggest mistake you see most of your patients are doing?
Oh,
what can we avoid?
Well, I think when they learn more, they can do better. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a mistake. But yeah, the more they learn, the more they can do. Lots of them just want a quick fix, and that it's not, again, it's a knowledge issue, because they don't know, no one's ever explained it to them. So when you come in with something like a A1C of 8.0, they say it's fine, just take glucophage. But as soon as we educate them, like, hey, you can dial that down, you can probably reverse most of that. They had no idea. So the biggest mistake is just the lack of knowledge that doctors are communicating to their patients.
Dr. Janine, Dr. Adeel Khan, thank you so much for the interview and podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So many things we can do. So all the links and contact details will be in the show notes. So I'm super excited for you to get healthy and fit. Before you go, a quick note to all the entrepreneurial listeners out there. If you're looking for a reliable and efficient way to scale your online business and payments, I highly recommend checking out Copecard.com. It's designed to streamline your processes from payment processing to customer management, all in one platform. Whether you're just starting out or you're looking to scale up, Copecard provides the tools you need to succeed. Visit Copecard.com today and see how it can transform your business operations. Dive in and start optimizing your sales processes now.